So you are back at part 3 of chronic stress and brain-body system implosion. We are now going to look at the effects of chronic stress and implosion on the body specifically. Finally, I really want to go downstream a bit. Let's go downstream into the body and just have a quick look at what happens in the body itself now during chronic stress and brain-body system implosion. So chronic stress switches on the inflammasomes in cells. Okay, I'm going to explain to you what that means. If you look at this very, very busy slide, please just sit back and don't even think about this for a moment. Just first listen to what I'm saying. So what I'm going to tell you is the following. Recently we discovered, or science discovered, a wonderful little structure. And you'll see the structure in there. It looks like a ninja star or a sea star if you want to sort of use your imagination. But that little wheel is called the inflammasome. It is sort of in the center bit of this particular illustration. The inflammasome is a construct of a number of little structures that are put together and assembled together within the body cells. Now, it is supposed to happen under normal conditions, but under normal conditions, the inflammasomes need to be assembled within cells in those cell lines that need to die. So if you have cancer cells, or you have ill cells, or cells which are not supposed to be doing you any good, your system should form inflammasomes, which is really transcribed or effectively informed and directed from the nucleus of each cell to form these inflammasomes, and then the inflammasomes need to effectively lead to the death of that cell line so that it is removed. And it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Now, if you have chronic stress, and if your brain-body system starts to implode, you have inflammasomes being formed in normal cell lines. And that is a huge problem, isn't it? And so your normal cell lines are being attacked with these inflammasomes. And it leads to inflammation, cell death and inflammation in specific organs. And depending on your genetic propensity or your genetic makeup, it will probably surface in those particular cell lines for which you are genetically more susceptible. For instance, some people will develop cardiovascular disease. So the blood vessels become inflamed in the walls of the blood vessels, which should then kickstart the whole atherosclerotic, cholesterol accumulating, damaging process that leads to coronary artery disease and strokes, etc., etc. And so this is all a pro-inflammatory state. Other cell lines can be affected in others, which can lead to cancer, which can lead to neurodegenerative conditions, autoimmune conditions, and multi-system disorders, etc., etc. So it is a hugely important the insight that I think everybody should really get from this understanding of what chronic stress and brain-body system implosion can do through the activation of inflammasomes in particular cell lines. And this is why I show you this, once again, very busy illustration that we borrowed from the internet. You can have a look at that just to understand that it's deeply cellular, that it is really happening in the body. If you are not looking after your body properly, if you have chronic stress and brain-body system implosion, this is what's happening in the normal cells and lead to an inflammatory state. Right. Now, the next slide, once again, just illustrates what I've just told you. There are different ways that the inflammasomes can be activated in this pro-inflammatory state, and it can lead to all kinds of conditions. And you can see there are a number of these being listed here. On the right, the so-called sterile attack, where there are not any infectious particles around, the heart, hypertension, metabolism, arteriosclerosis, diabetes, cancer, intestine, joints, brain, neurodegenerative conditions, multi-system disorders, and the list is just endless. It just goes on and on and on. And so it's important for us to really take note of this and to really understand something about the effects of chronic stress in the system. I'm ending off just by summarizing. So if you just look again at this particular slide that we started with, very important to prevent dysfunction, to remain in a relaxed physiological state, to ensure that this leads to wellness, so that the brain-body system is optimized. And so we build skill sets and competencies on top of that, so that we are a high-performing team, and that we remain resilient, and that this brain-body system implosion underneath the line does not really occur. I hope this gives you a very good picture and understanding, and I'm going to just complete and conclude by looking at the important highlights that I want you to take away from the session. Let's just go through these again and make sure that you are happy that you have covered all of these. First of all, in business, chronic stress is a result of ongoing perceived threats. Knowing what these threats are is of great functional value for high-performance leadership. And so understanding that chronic stress is a real problem in business, it's probably enemy number one, something we have to understand as leaders. And I'm going to, in the following Brain Performance Seminar, talk about the resilience idea and how we can build resilience as a core competency to optimize the brain-body system. And then we're going to really deal with what we can do to enhance resilience. So the how and what to do follows in the following Brain Performance Seminars once we have covered this idea of chronic stress and brain-body system implosion. Thirdly, remember the brain pays attention to the most basic cue that threatens its survival through a stress response, and this has implications for chronic stress and high performance. Also remember that the stress response is an essential, normal bodily function and operation, and it needs to happen daily. But there is something called bad stress, which is the chronic stress component especially, and this is what we focused on in this Brain Performance Seminar. Chronic stress kills brain cells and circuits. It causes amygdala regulation, while the sophisticated prefrontal cortex becomes less prominent. How to move into a state of prefrontal regulation? This is the one thing I'm going to deal with during the next Brain Performance Seminar, but I just need to mention one thing about this. If you want to move into a state of prefrontal regulation, you have to reduce chronic stress. You have to ensure that we move into a relaxed physiological state, and there are a number of ways we can do this through the drivers of brain performance. Importantly, we need to have social safety. We need to have bonding and belonging in the team. We need to look after our wellness rhythms of exercise, movement, and especially sleep-wake cycles, silence in the mind, having high mindfulness capabilities, which really moves you into the state of prefrontal regulation. Downstream, the effects of the chronic stress effect through the pro-inflammatory state is devastating. We looked at the number of conditions that can occur, and the way that the body cells are being destroyed by inflammasomes, which are activated if the chronic stress state and the brain-body system implodes. I hope this helps a bit. Finally, chronic stress is at the flip side of the brain performance coin, which means that if you really want to enhance the performance capacity of your team, you want to be sure that there is no chance of chronic stress creeping in. And that brings us to the end of this Brain Performance Seminar. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was meaningful. And the next seminar will deal with resilience.